he is gone, there is only carnage!
Evil. I'm necessary.
Soon I will show this world a war. The light.
All right. Not that you'll be much help, but I can't do this alone.
Collectors must feed now, and upon your earth.
You will know power you would have never known on Earth.
Souvenir for the old hometown.
Power of the sun in the palm of my hand. Nothing will stand in our way.
And I'll be smiling again, just as soon as we take that man there and slap him in that box there.
Oddly enough, although Trapster is a super weird and relatively obscure villain, he's still somehow made his way into a surprising number of comics. I mean, he has been around since the 60s, so considering that, I guess not so many, but we're still talking over 100 issues at least, which is pretty weird considering who Trapster is. Trapster is weird because, well, he was originally known as the guy who came armed with a glue gun, or a paste gun, if you will. Initially, he was known by the supervillain name Paste Pot Pete. However, Trapster has since come to loathe that name and much prefers to be called Trapster instead, as he feels the former name makes him sound lame and is often used out of disrespect for him. Admittedly, he is kinda lame though. Sorry Trapster, you might be a genius, but you still fight with glue. So, anyone that fights with a glue gun, I'm just saying. Although I will say if it was a hot glue gun burns do hurt a lot. Number 9. Polka Dot Man. You might think you know Polka Dot Man, but do you really know him? If you've seen the Suicide Squad, you are familiar with a version of Abner Krill, but the original Polka Dot Man, also Abner Krill of the New Earth continuity, was a little bit different when it came to his power set, at least initially. Initially, when Polka Dot Man, or Mr. Polka Dot, first appeared, he came armed with multiple different weapons which all came from the polka dots on his suit. He could pull them off and basically turn them into any means of different weapons and devices, even once turning one into a getaway vehicle. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to talk more weird, obscure things from comics with me, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. This list actually has everything that I love. Weird, obscure, and villains. I love all of those things. Number 8. Vanisher. Vanisher was actually one of the first villains that the X-Men came up against way back in X-Men issue number 2. In short, he was weird because he gave the X-Men so much trouble, especially considering Marvel Girl was on the team and he was only a teleporter. Though at this time they'd never encountered a teleporter before and were fairly new heroes. Also, Jean likely unknowingly had mental blocks in place. Vanisher's demise was also quite dark and odd when Professor X, who had left the X-Men to fight alone initially as a test, finally came to their aid and easily defeated Vanisher by making him forget who he was, which honestly is a pretty horrifying punishment. Don't worry though, that wouldn't be the end of Vanisher, and he'd also end up getting a much less extravagant costume. Which actually is kinda sad. I do like his original costume, with its whole thing. It's very red and patterned. Number 7. Crazy Quilt. Crazy Quilt actually might sound familiar to you in terms of his overall personality and demeanor, as it seems like the version of Polka Dot Man that we saw in the Suicide Squad, to me at least, is actually closer to a combination of the original Polka Dot Man mixed with, well, this villain, Crazy Quilt. Crazy Quilt was Paul Decker, a painter and criminal who left clues in his artwork as to his criminal plots. Eventually, he was apprehended, left blinded by a gunshot wound in the scuffle. He would regain his sight through an experimental procedure where his optic nerves were attached to a helmet, but the blinding colors that he would see would cause him to go insane. At least when I was watching the Suicide Squad, I was like, this Polka Dot Man kinda reminds me of Polka Dot Man mixed with Crazy Quilt, cause he's so crazy. Number 6. Unus the Untouchable. Another villain who almost foiled the X-Men in their early days was Unus. Unus the Untouchable was a mutant who couldn't be touched by those who would do harm to him, making him seemingly invincible when he first came up against the X-Men in issue 8. His power was also weirdly specific as it didn't repel all things from him, and mainly seemed to target those who fought against him and projectiles that would do him harm. Beast was the one to help defeat him when he learned of his true nature in a wrestling match against him. This was during a brief moment when Hank McCoy left the team. When Unus turned to a life of crime, Beast was the one to stop him by creating a device that intensified his power, causing everything to be repelled from Unus, including food. Starving, Unus eventually agreed to stay on the straight and narrow, and Beast returned his power levels to how they once were, allowing Unus to return to his wrestling career. Number 5. Ruby Thursday. Ruby Thursday is a super weird villain who I still can't even really believe to this day actually exists. but she does. I believe she was kind of designed as a character on a dare, but don't quote me on that story, as it's just something I remember reading somewhere. I didn't have time to go back and double check all that, but I'm pretty sure her creation story is something like someone dared someone to create a thing. It's a good story if you want to go check it out. Her creation is credited to Steve Gerber and Sal Buscema, and she first appeared in Defenders issue 32 in the 70s. Her whole thing is that she is a sexy villain lady, but in the place of where her head should be, she instead has a big red ball that is made up of organic circuitry and thereby gives her powers, while also acting as a stand-in head, because you still need a head to do things, so yeah. Number 4. Spook. A villain I love to talk about, but whom no one really seems to remember apparently. Val Caliban was a master escape artist who first appeared in Detective Comics back in the 70s. He was initially caught and long thought to be dead after being executed, or at least we thought he was executed, appearing in an almost ghost-inspired robe of a costume. In reality, Caliban had survived using his skills of hypnosis and escapism. He was also privy to the architectural plans of the prison as he'd worked to help design it. Thereby, he was able to exploit that knowledge and use it to escape. Honestly, it was pretty silly of them to try to put him in a prison that he'd designed, in my opinion. Years later though, he wouldn't be so lucky when changes had been made to its design and he ended up back in the prison again. And he'd be even more unlucky when he ran into Damian Wayne. It's Damian Wayne. Number 3. Gaggy. Gaggy was the sidekick of Joker. Before there was Harley Quinn, there was Gaggy. Although to be clear, Joker and Gaggy were not in a romantic relationship. Just thought I'd point that out. They were simply partners in crime. In fact, when Harley did start coming around, it was later revealed that Gaggy actually became jealous of her, and even that she was perhaps the reason for Gaggy's fall from glory in the Joker's eyes. At least that was how Gaggy saw it. He basically blamed Harley for all of it. More recently, Gaggy made a reappearance in the Batman 3 Joker's limited series, but sadly, he was killed off in that book, being eaten by a Joker shark. R.I.P. Gaggy. I love how Gaggy came back and then they were like, he's dead. I was like, oh, okay. Bye. Number 2. Tatterdemalion. Tatterdemalion is by all accounts a pretty weird and obscure villain, who at one point was stopped by Dazzler. He doesn't really have any powers, but instead has some kind of forgotten skills, possibly. He started out initially as a tap dancer who found fame in the movies with his dancing partner Julia Walker. Knowing eventually his star would dim, he invested money in a casino in Las Vegas, but later, after he retired to run it, was swindled out of his investment and money by criminals. Following that, he became a derelict and ended up allied with the committee. He eventually would become the crazed criminal Tatterdemalion, who sought to destroy money and material possessions as a means of revenge for what had unfairly happened to him. Honestly, it seems pretty fair of him to go that route. Eventually, Daz stopped him and helped to reunite him with his former dance partner, Julia Walker, but eventually she would grow tired of looking after him. Which also, fair. Number 1. Snowflame. Snowflame was originally a villain that first appeared in the 80s in DC Comics, making his first appearance in New Guardians issue number 2, and coincidentally, his last appearance as well, in the New Earth continuity anyways. Snowflame's powers are fueled by drugs, which grant him superhuman speed, strength, pyrokinesis, and made him numb to pain. He could also infect other people, intoxicating them merely by touching them. And guess what? There's more. It gets better. In 2020, he actually made a return in the Prime Earth continuity, appearing in the 2018 Catwoman series in issue number 23. So while he still remains obscure, he's also kind of recently renew as well. Yay.
Starting us off at our top 10 is a villain known as Bootface, a guy who takes off his boot and puts it in your face. Well, not really, that would just be stupid. Kind of like his name. In Peter Tomasi's Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 23.1, Two-Face, we see the death of this weird character. Bootface is a minion of the villain Terminus and only appears in 12 issues. His first one being Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 10. His exact origin is still unknown, but the reason why he is called Bootface is because during a prior battle with Batman, Bootface tries to burn Batman with a flamethrower. And of course Batman kicks him in his face, leaving a mean-looking boot print permanently in his face, thus giving him the name Bootface. I should also mention that Bootface has no powers whatsoever. He's just another bully looking to try and hang with the cool kids. So yeah, this is a weird one and maybe even a villain that was never even needed, but I'm sure as a writer it's fun making up dumb names every now and then. But don't worry, the fun doesn't stop here. At our number 9 spot, we have the terrifying and gruesome Flamingo. First appearing in Batman number 666, ooh, that's a nice number. Written by Grant Morrison, we meet Eduardo Flamingo, who was just an ordinary man until he got caught up with the mob. The mob then brainwashed him and also turned him into a serial killer who eats the faces of his victims. Flamingo sounds pretty dangerous, but doesn't really dress like it. He wears all pink and rides a pink motorcycle, and is also always seen with his whip. He famously almost killed Red Hood before Batman and Robin came to his rescue, but just after that, he did shoot Robin in the back 5 times at point-blank range. Making sure his punishment was indeed painful for his attack, Scarlet slashed the right side of Flamingo's face and then was hit by Jason Todd by a bulldozer, and then Red Hood dropped a huge mass of rubble onto him too. It appears that he is killed, but there is no body that is ever actually found. This guy might not seem like he is deadly or lethal at first glance, but I guarantee you he is quite the match. The only category he doesn't beat Batman in is his style, because damn, Flamingo is fly. Moving on. At our number 8 spot, we have Dr. Freak. First appearing in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight number 91, written by Garth Ennis, we meet Dr. Freak, a former Vietnam soldier who creates a powerful drug known as DCS-2000. Sounds pretty cool, right? No, it doesn't. Stay in school, kids. DCS-2000 is a super powerful version of... What does he do with his victims after he kills them? Well, he enjoys bathing in their blood, because that's what every other hippie would do in the world, right? I highly doubt it. Get it? Anyway, this character sounds like a great character that was probably made in the 60s, right? Nope. Garth Ennis wrote this character just as recently as 1997, making this villain even weirder than originally thought. At number 7, we have the sauciest villain of them all, the Condomin King. First appearing in the TV show Batman the Animated Series in an episode aptly named Make 'em Laugh, we find a series of comedians who are abducted and brainwashed by the Mad Hatter, and then are turned into the most mediocre of criminals. Mediocre is definitely correct, because Condomin King's crimes consist of him shooting ketchup, mustard, and other condiments at his enemies while making terrible condiment puns all at the same time. Please excuse me as I relish in the greatness of that idea. This is another villain that sounds like he would fit in perfectly in the 60s, but of course this TV series ran in the early 2000s, with his debut in 2002. Sadly, he was killed later in an episode in 2009, and that was the last of our precious Condomin King. We shall miss you, O Great One. Rest in cheese. At number 6, we have the Calculator. At the age of 5, Noah Cutler was locked in a cage by his mother and would not be let out until he solved the Rubik's Cube. No wonder this guy grew up to be an incredibly intelligent supervillain. In Detective Comics number 463, we meet the terrifying Calculator, a villain from the 1970s comic series who would go across the country committing multiple crimes and would purposefully get caught by his enemies. Why? So he could press a magic button on his chest that would prevent the same hero from ever catching him again. In his first issue, we see him square off against the DC superhero The Atom for stealing a quake-breaking device from one of Ray Palmer's colleagues at the cost of a man's life. I don't think this weapon really worked too well, as he is recorded as having been defeated by many of the DC superheroes, including the Atom himself. And fortunately for him and all of us, he is no longer out in the field, but is now operating behind the scenes as an information broker for the criminal underworld, which I can only guess his desk is covered in Rubik's Cubes. Coming in at our number 5 spot, these weird villains don't get any less weird, we have Emoticon Man. Another amazing creation by the super weird mind of Grant Morrison. His first appearance goes back to 2011 in Batman Incorporated number 6, where Wayne Enterprises' press conference is interrupted by a new villain and his gang, the villain being Emoticon Man. Both him and his gang members wore these crazy emoticon masks, and that was all they wore for their supervillain costumes. There's not much else to tell on this one, so, he gets defeated, and then after that, he was never seen again. I wonder why. At number 4, we have the worst villain to spell, but maybe the best one to say, Automata. Now, wait, Dewey, isn't that a literary term? Yeah, it is. And it's also a Batman villain, because why the heck not? Let's make something original, even if it does sound really lame. Automata is a serial killer with no superpowers, so guess which kind of heroes he goes after? Heroes with no powers, such as Batman. Back in 2002 in Green Arrow number 12, we meet Automata for the very first time after he stalks and murders the heroine, Virago. He is named this because he only speaks in onomatopoeias, such as BAM! Woof! Wham! You get the picture. He goes up against Batman a few times and, needless to say, obviously gets his butt kicked, but one interesting fact is that this character was actually created by the famous writer/director, Kevin Smith. Kevin, you are wicked awesome. Don't you think you could have come up with a little bit of a better villain than this? I mean, maybe he was still reeling from his loss of the Superman movie that he had going on with Nick Cage from years before, but if that's the case, I'll give him a pass on this one, but seriously. Dude. Starting us off at number 3 is Calendar Man. Any of you gamers out there might remember this villain from the famous games Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. But this villain's first appearance actually goes back to 1958 in Bill Finger's Detective Comics number 258. As a child, Julian Day's father promised he would be back home for the holidays. He waited for his father from Christmas Eve to New Year's Day outside until finally police took him in. He was almost dead from exposure, by the way. From then on out, along with that terrible memory and a terrible relationship with his mother, that began the long and soon-to-be new life of the Calendar Man. So, what's this guy's deal? Well, he will only commit crimes on holidays, such as Christmas, New Year's, you name it. This guy started off really lame, but he was one of the lucky weird ones who got a revamp in the 1996 storyline, The Long Halloween, where he was quite the maniacal evil villain. As we all know, the holidays can be a tough time for a lot of people. We don't need any more stresses or problems than what we already have. So, this guy might just be the evilest villain on our list yet. Either way, I think I'm gonna start calling that one, family member at all the events Calendar Man, because they'll never really know that I'm talking about them. Maybe you guys could use it too. At our number 2 spot, we have the villain from the infamous TV show Polka Dot Door, also named Polka Dot Man. I'm just kidding. He's actually from Batman, and there's probably a lot of you out there that have no idea what I'm talking about, and that was a wasted reference, but that's okay. Nevertheless, Polka Dot Man is a weird Batman villain. First appearing in Detective Comics number 300 back in 1962, we meet the bizarre Polka Dot Man. The man who dresses in a suit with polka dots all over him. But wait, it's not just because the look is highly fashionable, because it isn't. Because these dots can detach from his suit and be used as weapons on the talented dynamic duo. Some of these polka dots can even be used as a teleporter, for moments when he is a major loser and needs to bail out of a fight. Yeah, that's right, polka dot guy, I called you a loser. What are you gonna do about it? Teleport out of here? Okay, I will go easy on him. After all, he was created in the 60s, and that was a very fun time, to say the least. So it kind of makes sense. No matter what though, this is a very strange villain, and I think it'd be hilarious to see him brought back into the fold. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot and the most likely supervillain for me to be ever cast as, Johnny Karaoke. First appearing way back in 2007's Batman number 660, we meet Johnny Karaoke, a man raised in Southern California before he attended UCLA for business administration. And then he put his education to good use in the American arm of the Yakuza. I will add, he was fairly successful. However, Johnny and his geisha girls break into Omni-Med headquarters, but is defeated by Batman before he escapes and then is later killed by a villain Grotesque. Johnny Karaoke dies by getting shot in the head just after singing his last tune into his skull-topped cane/sword.
In at number 10, Red Tool. Red Tool is DC's parody of Deadpool, who was Marvel's parody of Deathstroke. So this dude is kind of a fun one. Aptly named Wayne Wilkins, Red Tool first appeared in 2014's Harley Quinn Volume 2 Issue 3. He is a vigilante who finds himself falling in love with Harley and becomes obsessed with her. He stalks her. She's not into him. But despite the unwanted attention, the two have become allies. Anyway, he is a villain who doesn't really have an overly extensive backstory, aside from the fact that he suffered a fatal event and survived, but was left with severe nerve damage. He had a surgery that removed a brain tumor, but in the process parts of his amygdala were removed too. Oh, and he also has a bionic arm. So, minor Winter Soldier vibes. Moving on to number 9, Gore the God Butcher. Gore may have debuted in 2013, but he has become one of the most memorable foes of Thor's in recent years. First appearing in Thor God of Thunder issue 2, he is an alien who's thousands of years old. Born on a planet with no name that was on the brink of starvation, he was raised to trust in the gods and to pray, but quickly became aware that the gods were not listening. When his parents died while he was young, he was left to fend for himself in the exceedingly harsh environment. Tragedy ensued further. When he started a family, his wife and 2 sons perished, causing him to lose all hope and faith in the gods, outwardly defying them. He believed them to be myth until he witnessed 2 gods, one of which was Null, fighting. During the conflict, he was bonded with Null's amorphous mass of living darkness, which gave him the all-black, the Necrosword. Gore then killed the other god with it and decided to set out on a quest of vengeance to slay all other gods for not answering his prayers. Eventually, his path crossed with Thor's, and years of revenge had colored his character into something very different. Now, we won't spoil what happened in the story since it is very much a fantastic arc that you guys should read, so definitely check it out. Moving on to number 8, we have Oblivion. Created in 2014, Oblivion is not to be mistaken with prior DC characters who also boasted that name. And yes, this is a DC character who does have some serious Venom vibes. This one is a product of Green Lantern Kyle Rayner, who unknowingly formed Oblivion after breaking through the source wall and editing the source. Oblivion is made up of Kyle's anxiety, rage, greed, and of course, fear, all manifested in physical form. So much so that Oblivion actually believed that he was Raynor himself for a while, hid out at his apartment, and then tricked Carol Ferris into thinking that he was the real Kyle. After he and Kyle clashed, Raynor ended up reabsorbing him into his own body in order to get rid of him. Moving on to number 7, we have the Eradicator II. A product of DC's rebirth, Eradicator II first appeared in 2016's Superman Volume 4 Issue 2. He is essentially a reboot of the original character who hails from the 80s. He is an ancient cybernetic being whose goal is punctuated by his name. His mission is to eradicate anything that would interfere with an idealized version of Kryptonian culture. So he's like kind of a Kryptonian Nazi. And he also looks like Superman minus the eye visor sunglasses thing. According to Rebirth lore, he is part of a group of robots that were created by General Zod, a task force that sought out Kryptonian lawbreakers and would arrest them. He attempts to eliminate Superman's son John Kent by absorbing him, therefore removing, I quote, the human taint. Yikes. Up next at 6, The Dark Knights. In 2017, DC released its Dark Knights Metal event, which saw Batman discovering a dark multiverse that existed beneath the core of the regular DC multiverse. The two are connected through mysterious metals that the Caped Crusader has encountered over the years. As he investigates it further, he accidentally lets in a major threat: 7 evil versions of himself, who, for the purpose of this number, we are calling the Dark Knights. These 7 evil alternates of Bruce are being led by an even more sinister force, a dark god called Barbatos, who wants to unleash darkness across every single Earth in the regular multiverse. But let's talk about the alternates here. There's the Red Death, an amalgamation of Batman and the Flash with a penchant for murder. Speaking of homicide, there's also Murder Machine, who is the cyborg version of Batman from Earth -4. There's Dawnbreaker, a Green Lantern Bruce Wayne, and there's the Drowned, a female version of Bruce named Bryce, who defeated Atlantis and then modified her own body to survive underwater in order to drown the entire world to feel the same loss and pain that she's experienced. Then there's the Merciless, who is a Batman who dons Ares' helmet, and the Devastator, who's essentially a Batman Doomsday. The last one we're not going to talk about because he's actually coming up later on our list, so hang tight, friends. Up next at number 5, the 4 Furies of Apocalypse. The 4 Furies, who hail from Earth 2, are an apocalyptic take on the female Furies. The group consists of 4 female beings: Pestilence, who can create plagues strong enough to kill parademons within seconds; Famine, who can drain the life force out of everyone and everything within her direct vicinity; War, who is telepathic and possesses wickedly fast speeds and immense strength; and Death, who is the most powerful of the Furies, and possesses such a vast necromancy that she can kill and then reanimate her victims by merely walking past them. And at number 4, Grail. Another DC character here, Grail first debuted in the 2015 Justice League Volume 2, Issue 40. She's the daughter of Darkseid, whose new god/Amazonian physiology gives her powers like super strength, speed, durability, stamina, immortality, enhanced senses, omega beams, will corruption, magic, dimensional travel, resurrection, and summoning. And yes, we said Amazonian. Her mother was an Amazonian assassin named Marina, and Grail was born at the exact same time as Wonder Woman was. She was prophesied to cause great destruction in the name of the anti-god, Mobius. And at number 3, we have Godspeed. Godspeed debuted in the Flash Rebirth Issue 1 from 2016, and then fully appeared in Flash Issue 3 a month later. Godspeed is August Hart, one of Barry Allen's best friends and also a detective. After his brother was murdered and the killer was exonerated, he becomes fueled by vengeance, and is then struck by lightning from the Speed Force, which gives him his speed-based powers. He becomes a vigilante who kills criminals as opposed to arresting them, which makes him an antagonist for the Flash, setting the stage for him to become both a supervillain and an anti-hero as time progressed. And at number 2, Star. Star is the most recent villain to debut on our list, first appearing in fall of 2019. And to be frank, we're not entirely sure if she is a villain, or will remain one in the near future, because she's kind of a villain now, but there's a lot of complex psychological stuff going on there. And she's done some pretty villainous stuff. Also, friends, heads up, spoiler alert for the recent Volume 10 of Captain Marvel's solo series. We won't be diving into Star's solo series since it's brand spanking new, and that would be kinda cruel. Star, aka Ripley Ryan, was initially a reporter who worked for Tony Stark. After an incident with Nuclear Man in which Captain Marvel saved her, Ryan was absolutely traumatized and ended up volunteering for an experiment of Minerva's. It was to genetically engineer humans into human-Kree hybrids with the promise of it potentially giving people who volunteered superpowers. Ripley was the only survivor of the experiment. Minerva actually tricked her into thinking that she had gotten powers through it by creating a device that siphoned the power of Captain Marvel. Star ended up becoming a foe of Captain Marvel's after the two fought side by side, until she found out that Minerva wanted to recruit Carol. She lost it, tried to kill the Kree scientist, and then went on a bit of a rampage, trying to siphon off the energy of the people of New York City. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, the Batman Who Laughs. The leader of the evil alternate Bruce Waynes, and perhaps one of the scariest villains to grace DC's panels in more recent years, is the Batman Who Laughs. He's essentially an amalgamation of Bruce Wayne and the Joker. He's an alternate Bruce who had killed the Joker, who had gone just a little too far. The Joker's body, upon dying, released a gas that drove Bruce insane and transformed him into a Jokerized version of himself. He ends up killing all of his Justice League peers, the rest of the Bat family, and then forces all of his Robins to be rabid dogs of sorts, attached to chain leashes. It's pretty disturbing. He's also the only character from the Dark Knight's Metal event who has succeeded the arc, having been so popular as to get his own series briefly, and cause more trouble for Batman on Prime Earth and Gotham. He is arguably one of the Dark Knight's greatest and most disturbing foes to date.
Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Mojo. I'll start this list off with a rather fun one. Not that any villain isn't fun, but when Mojo's involved, it always gets a little too weird in some way. He made his first debut in Longshot issue 3. Mojo is known for using Earth as forms of TV entertainment for the universe. So we're all actors. I'm in your screen right now. I'm actually part of Mojo's universe. I'm not even real. And his power increases the more viewers that he gets for this interdimensional TV show. So if you subscribe and like this video, maybe I'll get more powerful too, who knows? He's part of a race called the Spineless Beings. They're from a planet called Mojo World, of course, inside a pocket dimension called the Mojoverse. So it's all about him, we get it. He messes with the Avengers in a pretty dramatic way as well, especially in Avengers Annual 1. The Avengers of the Supernatural. Wow, there is a title right there. So in this issue, Mojo abducted the Avengers and created another supernatural version of the team. And if that wasn't weird enough, he made them participate in this reality show called Martian Transylvania Superhero Mutant Monster Hunter High School, which is just a mouthful. Basically, the mutants of the Unity Division were goths, the others were football players and cheerleaders, and the Avengers of the Supernatural were nerds. So he likes to play it weird. And before we continue on with this list of Avengers villains, guys, if you want to go ahead and give us more power by giving us a like down there, and if you haven't subscribed already, you might as well click that, and then you can see all our videos pop up. We do all the work for you. We'll just show up in your phone. Number 9, the Leader. Samuel Stearns, aka the Leader, made his first debut in Tales to Astonish issue 62. He was working one night at a chemical research plant, and when he was moving canisters of waste material, one of the canisters broke open, covering him in gamma radiation. God, everybody is so clumsy in comics all the time. Just so many spills. So of course, after the spill, Stearns survived just like Banner did after his gamma accident, but the only difference was it affected him in a much different way. See, he didn't get angrier, he got smarter and smarter, because now his brain could absorb so much more and more information. It actually got to a point where his physical body started to mutate. So now he has this giant green brain head. His head just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It looks like a gushy balloon, just about to pop any second. Of course he's a villain. Look at his head. I mean, no offense, but come on, I'd be upset too. That's all I'm saying. I'd be pretty upset. He started to refer to himself as the Leader, using his intellect to become a criminal mastermind, and he clashed with the other Gamma guy, Banner. In fact, he actually ruined Betty and Bruce's wedding once. He's kind of a jerk. But he's gone after the Avengers as well. When the Red Hulk gave Stearns Red Gamma treatment to enhance him even more, becoming the Red Leader, he became a member of the Thunderbolts. Number 8, the Mandarin. Ah yes, the first time Marvel told us that the popular enhanced individual was actually an actor all along. The Mandarin. He was in Iron Man 3, kind of. I mean, I'm including him on this list because that version wasn't even close to what he's really like. He made his first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 50. While exploring the inside of a cave in the Valley of the Spirits, he found an alien ship and a passenger still in there as well, named Axon Carr. But while he was there, he also saw 10 rings, these powerful rings, each representing a new power. So he took them, you know, because he's a villain. Then after finishing off the alien pilot, he began to study these rings and he began mastering them as well. So if he wears them all at once, his mind will be reached by the spirits trapped within the rings. Yeah, he's a pretty sick villain. And then in Iron Man 3, his name's Trevor and he just like crushes beer. Number 7, Grim Reaper. This next one we thought we were gonna see in WandaVision, but we thought wrong. We thought maybe if it wasn't Mephisto, it's probably Grim Reaper, but we were wrong on both. The Grim Reaper did not show up, but his silhouette did for a hot second, maybe. Eric Williams made his debut back in Avengers issue 52. He's the brother of Simon Williams, aka Wonder Man. He was considered a black sheep of the family, and when he was younger, he accidentally burnt down his house after, you guessed it, being clumsy with chemicals. the usual. So his brother felt responsible for not stopping him or being there for him when watching him. So after that, he began to watch him closely, a little bit too close, because Eric then became rebellious because of the supervision, and then soon he ended up with the Mafia in Las Vegas while his brother stayed and took over the family business. So with the business failing, no thanks to Stark being the top dog in innovation, he turns to his brother for some mob help to get things going again. So Simon embezzled money with Eric, but Simon got caught and thrown into the slammer, went thrown right to jail. So Baron Zemo approached him, asked for help to take out the Avengers, and revenge on Stark was included, so he was like, sure, this sounds like a pretty sweet gig. So then he got turned into Wonder Man, but he ended up saving the Avengers from Zemo's trap. He turned, he went good guy. But his brother, Eric, he heard of Simon's untimely departure, so he got angry and felt tremendous guilt after this. So he contacted the Tinkerer, who gave him a scythe. Then he took on the name of Grim Reaper, and voila, we now have a pretty badass villain. Number 6, Enchantress, aka Amora. She made her first debut in Journey into Mystery issue 103, and she has a love-hate relationship with Thor. And I'm not gonna lie, she's got a pretty sweet gig. She's got multiple mansions throughout the 9 realms, and she can make gold and diamonds with her tears. So even if she gets stood up on prom, she's gonna cry a few diamonds, and then she has more bling for the next date. So it's a win-win. She's really good at seducing people as well, like Scourge, for example. She would seduce him into helping her with her evil plans. But Amora wouldn't follow through with her side of the deal. She would just play hard to get, and she would mess with his mind and his heart. Now in the comics, she was sent by Odin to take out Jane Foster, but when she tried to attack Jane, of course, her love Thor intervened, and that's when she was banished to Earth by Odin. And then her next logical step as a villain is to join the Masters of Evil and get in line for taking down Thor or any of his annoying super teammates. Her tool is seduction, just one kiss, and that's all it takes to make you fall under her control. She doesn't have too much experience with hand-to-hand combat because she doesn't really need it. She just gets other dudes to fight her battles for her. What a boss. Number 5, Kang. This guy we can actually look forward to knowing more about soon, as he's confirmed for the next Ant-Man sequel with actor Jonathan Majors set to play him. But just who is Kang the Conqueror? Why is this a big deal for the Avengers? Well, he made his first appearance in Avengers issue 8 back in 1964, and Kang has seen many, many centuries. His powers allow him to travel through time, and his futuristic suit of armor is built with weapons that can take on beings from any of those timelines. He's super smart and of course travels with armies, with each warrior equipped with the same armor and weaponry, so the fights aren't exactly easy by any means. The time travel stuff also doesn't come without consequence either. See, as Kang travels more and more through time, he creates time-displaced duplicates, and with the cosmic multiversal route that Marvel's going with now in the MCU, and especially with Loki's show, we could probably look forward to some more mind-bending battles. Number 4, Taskmaster. Taskmaster made his first comic book debut in Avengers 195. Anthony Masters is a former S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, of course, who turned into a mercenary and assassin. Although he is one guy, he has this ability where he can copy your every move. So he can replicate your physical skills. He has photographic reflexes, so he can watch Black Widow take down an evil henchman, and bam, he's got it locked into his brain. He knows how to do the same type of combat as well. He's actually the villain of the Black Widow movie, but that has yet to come out due to COVID delays, so the general public doesn't really know how cool this guy is yet. He became a teacher based out of the Taskmaster's Academy to train villains and agents, one of those agents being US agent John Walker, who is currently turning heads for all the wrong reasons in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who taught Walker how to throw Cap's shield so well. In Avengers issue 196, he was able to capture Yellow Jacket, the Wasp, and Ant-Man, and then when the rest of the team showed up, he took them on as well, only being defeated because he could not predict the movements of the robot Jocasta. Otherwise, it's a tough battle, this one for sure. Number 3, Mephisto. While on the topic of characters that we wanted to see in the MCU, I of course gotta talk about the devil himself. He made his first appearance as a serpent in Bible Tales for Young Folk issue 1, but he made his first full appearance as Mephisto in Silver Surfer issue 3. I don't think I have to explain too much about this guy or why he's a threat. I mean, he's Satan. He's the literal devil of the Marvel Universe. He lives comfortably in hell with lesser demons that serve him. The reason we thought we were gonna get Mephisto in WandaVision goes back to something he did in the comics, which was kind of a big deal. The comic was Avengers West Coast Volume 2, issue 52. We find out the truth behind Scarlet Witch's children, Billy and Tommy, who were in WandaVision. Now it turns out the 5 pieces of Pandemonium's soul were actually Mephisto. So Mephisto tricked Pandemonium and gathered beings possessing the appropriate fragments, and 2 of those 5 fragments just happened to be children of the Scarlet Witch and the Vision. So when Pandemonium arrived, he took the kids, which in turn gave Mephisto full strength, and this left Scarlet Witch having a breakdown. Mephisto's awesome. His deals are always crazy. Like after the comic Civil War, when everybody knew Spider-Man's identity, Spider-Man had to make a deal with Mephisto in order to save Aunt May because she got shot. because he revealed his name to the public. So he's pretty wild. That's just one of many, many horrible deals. Number 2, Modok. Making its first appearance in Tales of Suspense issue 93, Modok was created by Dr. George Tarleton. He had worked with the team recently to create the Cosmic Cube, but the scientist supreme, Lyle Getz, figured the next logical step was figuring out a way to understand the powers inside said cube. So enter Project Modok. Spelt with a C at the end, not a K, that's important. So Modok stood for mental organism designed only for computing. Sounds like the perfect tool to analyze and probe this cosmic cube. So they grabbed that scientist George that I mentioned and altered him into this big-headed supercomputer. With a brain too big for his body, they had to give him a hover chair, which is referred to as the Doomsday Chair. I mean, he's already a villain. You guys are just kind of making this happen for him. The scientists did not prepare that with great power comes great superiority, so it wasn't long before Modok overtook his masters, changed that last letter from a C to a K, making his new, more suitable name for the list, Modok, which stood for mental organism designed only for killing. He's the big bad villain in the new Avengers PS4 game, and he's as crazy as it sounds in that game as well. And finally, number 1, Morgan Le Fay. Now, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe leaning into the witch madness for the conclusion of WandaVision, we might actually get to see Morgan Le Fay on the big screen soon enough. She made her first appearance in Black Knight issue 1 back in 1955, and she's been a recurring villain to the Avengers in the comics for a while now. And when the Dark Avengers were formed by Norman Osborn, Morgan was their first enemy to face off against. She's a powerful spellcaster, one of those spells being reality warping by using these Norn stones. So she packs a punch. Elizabeth Hurley actually plays Morgan Le Fay in the show Runaways, and she's great when it comes to these witchy, devilish roles. I mean, she literally played the devil in the movie Bedazzled as well, which is pretty funny. She was made for the role, it seems. Kicking off the list at number 10, Harley Sin. Constance Brand, aka Harley Sin, is the daughter of a billionaire, so you already know she's going to be trouble. Harley Sin first came around in 2016, making her first appearance back in Gang of Harleys issue 1. First of all, the look of Harley Sin, I'm here for it. She's got that Rocky Horror Picture Show vibe, she's a badass. The second issue, titled Hit 'Em Where It Hurts, we see the tattooed badass punk put in some work. She meets Harley Quinn, and during a fun little introduction panel, we see Sin say the words, "I'm the person that's going to be killing each and every one of your useless gang." So right off the hop, she's kind of a big deal. I don't know, she's in a bad mood. So this rich billionaire father I mentioned earlier, yeah, Harley Sin's father in fact is believed to be Donald Trump, or at least he was drawn and characterized to resemble him. That plus the tattoos, drug addictions, and lust for violence, you got yourselves quite the villain. And before we move on to number 9, make sure if you guys haven't done so already to go ahead and click that like button. It helps us out a bunch here at the studio, and it's this one, not this one. Unless you're a Spider-Man, then maybe it's that one. Go ahead and click that one.
Number 9, Grail. Grail is the villainous daughter of Darkseid and basically acts as an opposing force to Wonder Woman. The two women were born at exactly the same time, and it was prophesied that Grail, the daughter of Darkseid, and Myrna would bring about much destruction. As such, she was almost killed as soon as she was born, but her mother protected her. She proved almost right away in the comics that she was a new villain worthy of our time when she made easy work of the Justice League. She and Diana ended up facing off shortly thereafter, but their fight was interrupted. However, they would continue to clash during the Darkseid War, and likely will keep doing so, as Grail was basically designed to be the perfect foil for Wonder Woman. Grail was first introduced in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 40.
And number 8, Godspeed. August Hart, aka Godspeed, made his first debut not too long ago in The Flash Rebirth Volume 2, Issue 1. With a name like Godspeed, one can only assume the powers in which they'll contain. Super speed, which is also my favorite superpower on the low. Created by Joshua Williamson and Carmine Di Giandomenico, sorry if I butchered that name, I tried 7 times. Godspeed stands out from the rest of the speedsters because of one badass reason. He can separate speedsters from the speed force. Now if you watch the CW's Arrowverse, you know what I'm talking about already. August Hart was also a detective, a former partner of Barry Allen, to be frank. And then along comes a force storm in Central City, and all of a sudden you have these godlike powers. Pretty ideal powers for a hero, and also a villain. That's right, as you would have guessed by clicking this video, he doubles as a villain on the low. So he became the Flash's partner while secretly becoming Godspeed the villain. Not cool, dude. Why the villain move though? Well, when August's brother was murdered by a criminal, he was released due to insubstantial evidence. So August decides to confront the Black Hole organization after they had stolen property from Star Labs. He sees their symbol that resembles one at his brother's crime scene. Interesting. So while confronting him, that's when the Speed Force lightning strikes. I feel like if I was a speedster, I would just be like Quicksilver, right? Hang out in the basement, play some stolen video games. Is it really that hard to just chill out? I know you're angry, but like, it's all good. Speed walk it off.
Number 7, Perpetua. Perpetua is an old evil, but one that we didn't know of in the comics until 2018 when she was first introduced in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. Perpetua quickly became known as one of the greatest evils the universe, or multiverse really, had ever known. She was the creator basically of all things and the mother to the AntiMonitor, World Forger, and Overmonitor. Billions of years ago, she was betrayed by her own children and trapped in the Source Wall along with her devastating and deadly creatures, the Apex Predators, a vicious combination of Martians and humans. Yeah, she really old. Perpetua was the one ultimately responsible for the crisis in the DC universe, as it was her whisperings from within the Source Wall that brought them about. The energy allowed her prison to weaken, cracking a little more each time there was a crisis, which was how Perpetua planned to escape. She was eventually freed when the Source Wall broke as a result of Barbatos and the Batman Who Laughs actions, allowing her to once more wreak havoc on the world and earn back her power so she might rebuild the universe again in her own horrifying image.
Number 6, the Kindred. Making its first appearance in the Multiversity Guidebook number 1, the Kindred is this cosmic force that appeared after the Rebirth event. Created by Grant Morrison, the Kindred is a 4-part entity, and they each represent DC lore, so those 4 being the Speed Force, Magic, Cosmic Power, and Emotional Light Spectrum. So they have a handle on pretty much any angle out there. Now, this is a villain list, so this is bad news for us, or rather bad news for pretty much any world. For starters, they take all of the energy from living creatures. That's how they come together. Nice, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Also tears. So off the bat, these guys are just OP. I love the look of these celestial gods though. They each have like their own color. Even if Brian Hitch wrote them into his run with the Justice League, with destruction being the driving force, this is still kind of a villain that even I'll root for. I said it, sue me, what's up?
Number 5, Punchline. So Punchline has to be one of my favorite of the newest villains we've seen. I didn't want to like her when she was announced, especially as I thought she was going to be like some new younger version of Harley Quinn, which I didn't really think that we needed. But then I met Punchline, and I gotta say, I like Alexis. She's okay by me. Punchline's real name is Alexis K, and we learned her backstory in the Joker 80th Anniversary Special. She sought out the Joker believing that his ideology matched or at least suited her own. She has displayed some pretty sweet chemistry and toxicology skills, making Batman his own special version of the Joker Venom. How nice. Which tormented him through most of the Joker War story, and has proven how deadly she can be with her stilettos when she managed to land a life-threatening hit on Harley Quinn. I really hope we get more Punchline in the near future. I was pleasantly surprised by how different and interesting she is in comparison to Harley Quinn, and I also just love her character design. Punchline first appeared in Batman Volume 3 in issue 89.
Number 4, Eradicator 2. With that name alone, oh boy, you already know what's coming. The Eradicator 2 was created, of course, after DC's Rebirth with the absence of the original Eradicator. Another big bad version was bound to show up. I mean, we expected it. So of course, this is the newer version of Eradicator from the 80s comics. But the best part is that he still has the 80s look. He's got the retro, badass glasses, which are such a nice touch, by the way. Just by looking at this guy, you can tell he's the coolest. Created by General Zod, this AI ended up taking on the physicalities of Superman, hence the everything about him. So when this badass AI is close to a yellow sun, he gets powered up real good. I'm talking the usual super strength, stamina, flight, speed, and he's basically invincible. A cool but scary power that he also obtains is that of energy manipulation, because he's made of course, pure energy. Eradicator wasn't used too much, but I feel like Eradicator 2, since his first new appearance in Superman Volume 4 Issue 2, at the very end we see his rebirth, and it's beautiful. Once the Kryptonian gene is detected back on the Fortress of Solitude, energy forms all around the room. There's an ID badge, some glasses, and then bam, all this mixed into one. You get this bright pop, and his opening line being, "We are here, we will save you too, Kal-El." And it's sick. He's like basically Terminator with a cape. He's got the look, there's this energy coming from him. I would love to see this guy go head to head with Henry Cavill. I mean, maybe we'll get more of a dark alternate version with the Snyder cut of the Justice League, but fine, that'll have to do in the meantime. For now.
Number 3, Clown Hunter. Clown Hunter is just a kid who stepped up to the plate when it came to taking back Gotham during the Joker War. Seeing his neighborhood being ravaged and attacked by the Joker gang, and having lost his parents to the Joker, he was inspired to start cracking skulls, which is exactly what he did, defending the innocent with a baseball bat with a batarang attached to it, to kill any clowns that crossed his path. His true name is Bao Pham, and at the end of the event, he was confronted by Batman himself, who suggested that he seek help and speak to a therapist. He also offered to mentor Clown Hunter, but warned him that he would not tolerate the teenage Bao killing anyone else, no matter their crime. Clown Hunter seemed interested in getting help, but only after his work was done. Clown Hunter first appeared in issue 96 of 2016's Batman.
Number 2, the Batman who laughs. Bruce Wayne, but from Earth 22, is a touch different than the one that we know best. The Dark Universe is a very special and very vast place filled with alternate versions of characters, but one of the most notable has to be the Batman who laughs. Making his first appearance in Dark Days, the casting, this Bruce Wayne has, well, of course, similar origins that we're familiar with. Parents were murdered, became a crime-fighting bat, protects Gotham, all the good stuff. But this Joker changed his path up. Joker began murdering everybody in Gotham. He bombed a hospital and then shot the parents of the kids. Like, he's twisted, and he's also dying at the same time. He's dying from the chemicals that made him become the Joker in the first place. So of course he wanted to take everybody out with him. So when Batman stepped in and killed him by breaking his neck, the toxins from the Joker were inhaled by poor Batsy, causing this to happen. So a day later, he's joined by Batgirl, Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, who were training in the Batcave, and then Batman then shot all of them. And then this is just the beginning. This insane clown Batsy is terrifying and entertaining in all of the right ways.
Number 1, Ghostmaker. We don't know a lot about Ghostmaker yet. He first appeared in Volume 3 of Batman, the current run, in issue 100 as a mysterious figure. And so far, he stayed that way. We'll likely see more of him in issue 103, but so far we know he's not as new as he might appear. In fact, in Batman issue 102, Batman seems to recognize him, leading many to speculate as to which old rival Ghostmaker's true identity could actually be. We do know that he's here to challenge Batman for Gotham and to provide the people with an alternate option when it comes to choosing their hero for their city. He also comes with a ton of tech, and at this point is probably going to quickly end up being better equipped than Batman himself when it comes to gadgets, as Bruce just lost all of his fortune to Lucius Fox. Well, he gave it away, that is. And Lucius is out of the Batman game. Bruce is on his own this time around when it comes to equipping himself, and he only has his own ingenuity and the help of the Bat fam to back him up.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Time Trapper. First appearing in Adventure Comics 317, the Time Trapper comes from the far future. He actually prevented the Legion of Superheroes from traveling into their future using an iron curtain of time. He likes to hang out at his home located safely at the end of time. How neat is that? Kind of similar to Kang. In his first few issues, the Time Trapper was seeking the Concentrator, which was a weapon that draws energy, any energy source in the known universe, together. It's also a pretty big secret as well. The Time Trapper pretended to be the commissioner of the Science Police and tortured the Legionnaires, although they said it was a test in order to gain intel. Now, Lightning Lad knew something was fishy, so he cracked and spilled secrets, false ones of course. So this brought the team to actually figure out how to assemble the real Concentrator. And when an angry Time Trapper returned, he launched a plethora of Dark Stars at the crew, but luckily that Concentrator could absorb any energy source, like I said, so they were blasted out of existence. We're good. The Legion lived to tell the tale, but we just got Kang in the MCU, so I don't think we need another Time Lord showing up. My brain hurts enough already. Give us like 5 years and then bring in some more time stuff. Number 9, Eclipso. Making his first appearance in House of Secrets issue 61, Eclipso was made from God's spirit of wrath. He's the living embodiment of wrath. It doesn't get more menacing than that, folks. He was made to punish the wicked, to clean the world of evil, of course, until the Spectre replaced him. Wrath was driven by anger, whereas vengeance, that required more of a discerning hand. So what happened after was Wrath's physicality was trapped within an all-black diamond called the Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness, kind of like the heart of the ocean, but instead of Rose tossing it overboard, a treasure hunter found it in Africa and accidentally split it into 1,000 pieces, and now we're all Each of those pieces contained a shard of darkness. So Eclipso figured out a way to possess people through these diamonds, and that first man being possessed was Bruce Gordon. Bruce was a scientist specializing in solar energy, and while he was in a jungle observing a solar eclipse, a sorcerer named Mofir attacked him with one of those black diamonds, and after that, every eclipse, Eclipso would take over Bruce. Unbeknownst to Bruce though, Eclipso would soon learn to bind himself to anybody near any shard that happened to be angry at the time. Nowadays there's a lot of angry folks, so this is bad news. The entity of wrath possessing anybody who gets upset, that sounds, yeah, just smile and wave I guess, just lie. Just lie and pretend you're happy, then you're good. Before we continue on with this list, if you want to spread the love and hit that thumbs up, it really does wonders for us at the channel. You guys are amazing, thanks so much for watching, let's keep this going. Number 8, Justice Lord Superman. Coming from the animated universe, the 2003 Justice League episode titled A Better World showed us one that's rather the opposite. This parallel universe showed Kal-El and the Justice Lord storming the White House after President Lex Luthor had just executed the Flash. Now the team of course wasn't too happy, so Batman and Wonder Woman fought off the Secret Service while Superman told Luthor that he's taken him in. Lex is insane, so we had a button ready that could literally start a nuclear war if it was pressed. And he's threatening Superman, saying that he needs to use deadly force if he wants to save the people. So Superman's like, okay, and then just eyes glow red, and then he turns them into ashes, just like that. And when Batman and Wonder Woman come back in, it's far too late. Superman just has a smile on his face, and Lex is just a pile of dust. Good times. After this, for the next 2 years, the Justice Lords would rule using violence like it was normal. They saw this and they're like, well, that certainly did the trick. Let's just keep doing that. Justice Lord Superman used his heat vision to wipe out all of Earth's criminals and villains. If we had him in the DCEU, the movie would be a lot shorter than 4 hours. It would be like 36 minutes. Snyder Cut, maybe 44 minutes. Number 7, Superboy Prime, another super menace. First appearing in DC Comics Presents issue 87, this version of Supes has more powers and less weaknesses. I'm talking immunity to kryptonite and magic, which is a fantastic combo. He arrived to Earth and was soon discovered by Jerry and Naomi Kent while they were on a hike in a New England seacoast town. They named him Clark, although Clark Kent was the name of a popular comic book hero named Superman. So yeah, Superman already existed on this Earth, so Clark grew up and later attended a costume party at a beach and dressed like Superman. He went to get a glimpse of Halley's Comet and it was all a good time, and then all of a sudden a tidal wave hits, this portal opens up, and the Superman from the comics pops out. Now at the same time, young Clark's powers manifested and he quickly learned what to do with them in the moment. Superboy then followed that Superman back into the portal to an alternate reality, and he would never be the same again. Crisis on Infinite Earths was this multiversal catastrophe where parallel dimensions were being consumed by the AntiMonitor, who I'll talk about later. Superboy dove in, joined the fight, but was unable to prevent the destruction of his Earth. So Superboy Prime and other survivors escaped to a paradise dimension that Alexander Luthor Jr. offered. Using crystals, Superboy just relived happy times in this paradise, but eventually he got frustrated and shattered the barrier of reality. He literally punched everything apart. He retconned quite a bit in DC continuity. For example, he brought back Jason Todd, he combined Superman's origins, Doom Patrol was now rebooted, and we had numerous incarnations of Hawkman and the League of Superheroes. I feel like DC could use a big bad Superboy Prime punch to clear up the timeline, but hopefully the Flash movie does that, because this guy is just a little too crazy. Number 6, Brainiac. Another close rival of Superman's, Brainiac made his first appearance in Action Comics 242. This guy right off the bat is a very specific villain. He would love to steal cities. Yeah, watch out for your cities, keep them safe, put them under your mattress. He took Metropolis at one point. This guy's wild. He would use his shrinking ray, shrink your city, and then take them back to his planet. Vril Doc started his days as a scientist, and one day he successfully cloned himself because he needed an assistant, so who better to hire than yourself? He built the spaceship Next and traveled to the cosmos, gaining knowledge and studying alien organisms with the help of his robot drones, and during these travels he came across Krypton while General Zod was still running the show. So of course, this dude shrunk down the entire city of Kandor and studied it in his ship. He made a remote scout unit that believed it was the original Vril Docs, and then it traveled to Earth and took over the body of sideshow mentalist Milton Fine, whose stage name was Brainiac. Now it makes sense. Number 5, Necron. Also known as the Lord of the Unliving, Great. Necron made his first appearance in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue 2. He's literally the embodiment of death. Necron figured out the land of the living existed after the death of an immortal caused a rift to open between dimensions. So Necron saw all this life and he was like, this looks tasty. He wanted it. Well, really he wanted to master it and get out of his hell, his literal hell that he was living in. So he resurrected Krona, even throwing in a classy army of the dead to assist in taking down the Guardians of the Universe. Taking them down ended up widening the rift, so it took all the Green Lantern Corps to stop them, but even after winning, countless lives were lost in this fight. Hal Jordan ended up going to the land of the unliving, accepting the possibility that he may just never return, and there he gathered the souls of other fallen lanterns, and it was just enough to fight off Necron and return, with the Guardians sealing the rift promptly afterwards. But like Necron says, you can never defeat death. Back in 2009, it was revealed Necron was behind the Black Lanterns and instigated the Blackest Night event. There he took over the bodies of Wonder Woman and Superman while also bringing back dead heroes to join his side. Number 4. Prometheus. Helmets are pretty important, especially in combat, and especially if one helmet in particular gave you the skills to beat, I don't know, Batman. Prometheus first appeared in New Year's Evil, Prometheus issue 1 back in the late 90s, and at first he was just the son of two criminals who traveled across the US, real Bonnie and Clyde style. But as a kid he would have to go with them, right, because they couldn't afford a babysitter. They were rich with like mob money, but they couldn't afford a babysitter. Okay, so eventually the police caught on and they were never seen again. The police killed them in front of the boy, almost like a darker Bruce Wayne origin. So he grew up with their fortune, only it was a stolen fortune. Then he traveled the world, trained as a fighter, trained as a mercenary. He learned a dozen different languages and he was pretty skilled by the end of it. Then he found the ancient city of Shambhala where their monks studied evil. They trusted him and showed him their greatest treasure, which was an alien ship. Not too bad. Their leader was actually an alien in disguise. He landed there, but Prometheus had to kill him to obtain the key to enter the Ghost Zone. The Ghost Zone was this infinite expanse of white emptiness, the space between dimensions. Kryptonians called this the Phantom Zone. And in there, Prometheus built himself a house, a costume, and his first advanced helmet that downloads info to take on the Justice League. He was great, like he shot Martian Manhunter so then he couldn't change, he infected Steel's armor with a virus, he hypnotized Huntress, and he hit Green Lantern with a neural shaft so his ring was useless. He also trapped Zuriel in said Ghost Zone and beat Batman with hand-to-hand combat. Not too shabby at all. Number 3. The Batman Who Laughs. We've seen quite a few Batman on screen. We're even seeing Michael Keaton return to Gotham in the next Flash movie, which is pretty exciting. But the Batman Who Laughs, aka The Darkest Night, might be a bit too hardcore for the theaters. Coming from the Dark Multiverse, first appearing in Dark Days The Casting, created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, comes a twisted Earth 22 version of the Batman Who Laughs. The Joker here is insane. He goes on this spree throughout Gotham, just chaos in the streets. He took out Jim Gordon, then he poisoned Batman. It was all bad, and then once Batman was able to move again after the poison had run its course, he broke the Joker's neck, which is already immediately so dark. But even the Joker was prepared after death. After that snap, he let out this toxic breath that let everybody near him get infected, including Batman. Cut to 2 days later, Batman and Superman are talking about what happened, and when Superman tells Bruce that a kid infected by Joker bit a doctor, Bruce ends up laughing, like this maniacal laugh. And he catches himself after, he's like, sorry about that. Superman knows something's off here, but a day later, Bruce called the team to the Batcave and went full on Omni-Man. He took out the entire team before anybody caught on to his new and violent personality. Number 2. The AntiMonitor. Making his first appearance in Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 2, the AntiMonitor was DC's excuse to cut out a lot of fat from the comics, basically. The multiverse was introduced back in the 60s. The Golden Age heroes were residing on Earth 2, and then came Earth 3, and then so on and danforth. So when Crisis on Infinite Earths came around, DC Comics introduced this big bad cosmic villain to set something straight going forward. Clean up the multiple timelines, makes sense. Now it all started when Krona performed this experiment. They wanted to see the origin of the universe, but instead an opposite universe was created, the antimatter universe. AntiMonitor wanted nothing but death and destruction, and after battling his brother for, say, I don't know, 1 billion years, they both fell unconscious. And then 9 billion years later, they were woken up. When they tried to destroy Earth 1, many heroes lost their lives, and in order to stop that chaos, Superman had to punch them into a star. Who knows, with the Flash opening up the multiversal door, we could see him on the big screen in our lifetime. Maybe. And finally, number 1, Perpetua. Of course, one of the most feared beings in the greater Omniverse. Also known as the First Creator, she made her first appearance in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. She was the mother of the Monitor, AntiMonitor, and World Folder. She was actually one of the hands that created the multiverse, literally. Each member were these celestial beings and they would pass on and their energy would return to the source, but Perpetua was different. She wanted a dark, vicious reality that would live forever. So she created the first iteration of the multiverse using negative crisis energies and then had 3 cosmic children. She was creating an army also to rule over the multiverse, so her children snitched. Yeah, they told the judges of the source, and Perpetua was locked away outside the source wall with her negative energies. But even locked away, she was able to connect to Lex Luthor, who believed freeing her would make him a hero on some multiversal scale. So next time you want to kick somebody out of your party, just banish them to the source wall with their negative energy. That's how he works.
Number 10. Oblivion. Oblivion first made his appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians annual issue number 2. He was created after Kyle Rayner edited The Source. Oblivion embodies all of the darker emotions of Kyle Rayner, and he kind of has like a Venom vibe going on, which I dig. He ended up teleporting himself and Carol Ferris to Arizona, where he then created illusions of Rayner's friends and superhero colleagues. Rayner arrived and confronted Oblivion, urging him to fix the town in Arizona that he'd altered with illusions, but Oblivion of course refused. In the end, Kyle realized he had to merge with Oblivion in order to defeat him. However, his attempt to do so resulted in both Oblivion and himself becoming lost within the vastness of the source. That's why you don't mess with the source. Number 9. Red Tool. Red Tool made the cut because, while not a serious threat as a supervillain, he is just super entertaining. He's basically DC's ripoff of Marvel's Deadpool, who of course himself is a ripoff of DC's Deathstroke. Red Tool is a mercenary who fights solely with hardware tools and equipment. He was introduced in Harley Quinn's series and seems full-on obsessed with her there. He tattooed his phone number on her butt during their first meeting, wherein he also kidnapped her. Despite his obsession, however, and the two getting off on somewhat of the wrong foot, or maybe the odd foot really, the two eventually became good friends, with Red Tool's Wayne Wilkins even becoming a potential love interest for Harley. I also just love that all of his speech bubbles tend to be tools. It's cute. Bonus points for art. Number 8. The Inheritors. So I know not everyone loves the Inheritors as much as I do, but my love of Victorian style and vampires as well as alternate versions of Spidey meant that these villains, well, they were basically destined for me to love them. These energy vampires have plagued many different versions of spider people as they feed off of the energy of spider totems. The other awesome thing about them is they help to bring us Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, which ultimately led to the development of the film version into the Spider-Verse. And without them, we also wouldn't have the Web Warriors or any of the Spider Army. So yeah, you might not agree that they're terrifying and awesome, but either way, you have to agree that they're kind of important in developing the Spider-Verse itself. So respect. There's gonna be so many people being like, Amanda just loves Twilight vampires or something in the comments. I don't. Just FYI, in case you're wondering. Number 7. Kindred. Kindred was a new Spider-Man villain who first fully appeared in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, Issue 5, after being mentioned many years ago in Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man Issue 12. Not much has been revealed about the villain, which automatically makes them super intriguing to me. At first, it almost seemed like they could be an ally to Peter. Kindred was a human in life who was sent to hell and death and became a demon. They seem to have known Peter in life and affectionately referred to him as Pete. Kindred even kept an eye on MJ for Peter, but Peter had also had a vision of them harming her. Kindred later revealed that they had returned to get revenge on both Norman Osborn and Peter for causing pain to them in their life, but especially Norman. I mean, obviously caused more pain. However, when they came upon Norman, he was not himself, he was stuck in his Cletus Cassidy persona, so Kindred spared him and simply inserted one of their centipedes into his brain through his ear to keep Osborn/Cletus from killing Spider-Man. Kindred's buying his time, waiting until, Norman Osborn is Norman Osborn again, which is fair, because he wants that revenge to be just on Norman Osborn, not this Cletus persona. Confusing. So all we know is that Kindred is vengeful and seems to have apparently mind-influencing centipedes. Number 6. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught is a clone of the original Red Skull, Johannes Schmidt. This one managed to take things to a level of ridiculousness that even surprised me. We are talking soap opera levels here, people. Okay, here we go. After Professor X died, this Red Skull clone worked hard to get his hands on the dead telepath's brain. He gave himself a brain transplant, or at least a partial one, in order to harness Charles's old powers, because apparently that's how that works. This made Red Skull pretty powerful. He ended up using this power to turn Genosha into a concentration concentration camp for mutants and Inhumans alike, which obviously royally pissed off Magneto. Magneto, furious, attacked Red Skull, but decided not to use his powers and give him a cleaner death by killing him naturally, by smashing his skull with bricks, which, if we're talking about cleaning up after as in a cleaner death, that doesn't really sound that clean. This was overall a bad move as well, as it only unlocked a more powerful persona within Red Skull, known as Red Onslaught. The terror and hate that Red Onslaught unleashed set us up for the Axis event, as the only way to stop Red Onslaught was by Scarlet Witch flipping his psyche to give the small consciousness of Xavier that was still left in that brain more control. Number 5. Godspeed. This villain was introduced in Rebirth. August Hart was a witness to the event that gave Barry his speedster powers. He was also Barry's partner on the Force and was granted his own speedster powers as well, using them to get revenge on his brother's killers. When a speedstorm granted multiple civilians speed powers as well, August joined Barry in rounding them up. What Barry didn't know at the time was that August was actually Godspeed, a villain who was tracking down civilians with speed powers and draining them of their speed energy to make himself more powerful, and thereby killing those he siphoned speed from. In fact, it's this power of harnessing other speed energy that made him so dangerous as a villain. Number 4. Modok. Remember when Donald Trump made his way into the comic book world? He appeared in Spider-Gwen Annual No. 1 in 2016 on Spider-Gwen's home of alternate Earth 65, where he became that Earth's version of terrifying yet hilarious villain, Modok. Pretty fitting, I think. Not only does Modok, which stands for Mental Organism Designed as America's King, make the list because of how topical he is, but he also makes our cut because he was one of the last creations revealed by Stan Lee, who thought it was fitting that the villain be defeated by Earth 65 Captain America, aka Samantha Wilson, who is both female and a person of color. Although Lee was not responsible for the villain's creation, he definitely got a kick out of this one. Modok was created by Jason Latour and Chris Visions. Number 3. Orcus. One of the biggest threats to mutant kind has recently appeared in the comics, although mutant leaders like X almost seem to be becoming somewhat eerily villainous themselves in a way. No side in the House of X series actually seems quite just, which I think is what I like so much about it. It all feels very gray area when it comes to the characters, despite the fact that their views are also very extreme. Still, if you are siding with the mutants, then Orcus is the enemy that we are talking about for this list. They are an organization comprised of many different agencies such as S.H.I.E.L.D., Strike, Sword, AIM, Armor, Hammer, Hydra, you know, just all the acronyms there. Oh, and Alpha Flight. Not an acronym, but still important. Their goal is to protect humanity from drastic events that could threaten the human population. One of their projects that we saw in House of X was the Mother Mold, a creation even more dangerous than a Master Mold. The Mother Mold learns and changes the mold of Sentinels it creates over time, learning as it creates and witnesses the outcome of those Sentinels it builds and sends out. While the X-Men defeated the Mother Mold, just the prospect of a team which is smart enough to build such tech is terrifying if you're a mutant. 3 Jokers. While we wait for this one to be released, these 3 mysterious villains gave us Batman fans one of the biggest gasp moments maybe ever. In Justice League issue 42 from 2015, when Batman asks the Mobius chair, which knows all, about the identity of the Joker, it gives him a strange answer, that there are actually 3 Jokers. What? We didn't even find out though what that answer was until 8 months after the question was asked as well. We just got to see Batman be like, what? And then we were left with that cliffhanger piece of information that there were 3 Jokers for like what feels like forever. Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok set out to work on a miniseries from DC's Black Label exploring this mystery titled Batman 3 Jokers. But this series has since had its expected release date pushed back, and then back again. And now it's looking like we should probably see this book sometime this year in 2020. Hopefully it's worth the wait, and hopefully, please let it end up being canon. Still, prospects seem good for these 3 Jokers. I really just want to know who they are. It's very exciting. Number 1. Dark Carnage. Okay, so I know that Cletus has been a villain who's been around since the 1990s, but his latest resurrection and change has taken the supervillain to new heights, breathing new life into him and changing him into something beyond his more well-known alias as Carnage. Following the events of the Poison invasion, Cletus returned to Earth, literally plummeting out of the sky. As the atmosphere threatened to burn him up upon re-entry, the Carnage symbiote re-emerged, attempting to protect its host. However, it failed, and it seemed that Cassidy and Carnage had perished, until a Null-worshipping cult got its hands on his corpse and managed to bond Cletus with the ancient Grendel symbiote, aiming to turn him into a vessel for Null to return in. This set in motion the events of absolute carnage, putting in danger the lives of anyone who had ever bonded to a symbiote, or the corpses of those now deceased who had bonded to a symbiote, as Dark Carnage set out to consume their symbiote codices located in their spinal columns. Number 10. Mr. Negative. Starting off strong, we have a supervillain who was introduced in 2007 and yet despite being newer to the Spider-Man supervillain roster, has quickly risen in terms of his evil acclaim. Mr. Negative's true identity still remains somewhat of a mystery to us. He was originally a member of a gang in China known for human trafficking. Looking to escape the criminal life, he stole the identity of one of the human cargo who had perished on the journey to the States, Martin Lee, who was setting out to America to join his wife. Martin Lee, and now that's what we think when we think Mr. Negative. He ended up kidnapped by Simon Marshall, who was developing a drug called D-Light, the experimentation of which often led to the death of those who tested it. He forcefully tested it on fake Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative, and 2 other hostages of his who somehow survived the process. The 3 escaped and as a result of the experimental drug, developed superpowers attached to the Dark Force and Light Force. Martin Lee would become Mr. Negative, and the other 2 prisoners, Tyrone Johnson and Tandy Bowen, would become Cloak and Dagger. The effects also caused a split within Mr. Negative's personality, dividing the evil criminal persona of Mr. Negative from the kind and sweet persona of Martin Lee. Mr. Negative has the power to corrupt a person, bringing out the dark side of them with just a touch. He can also imbue weapons with the Dark Force, making them stronger, or increasing their strength, you know, whatever. Anyways, that's it. That's all you gotta know about Mr. Negative apparently. I told you enough, I told you his origins. Number 9. Hippo. I felt we had to include Hippo because a lot of these villains have just a lot of intense and serious elements to them, and they're all terrifying in their own way, but Hippo does a good job of providing some of the lightness to the new Spider-Man villain scene. After all, Spider-Man comics are often known for having some of the most, ridiculous villains? Comical villains? How can we put that? I don't want to insult them. Not to say that hippos aren't terrifying, by the way, because they are. You don't want to mess with a hippo. I know that. I certainly would not mess with a hippo. Still, Mrs. Fluffy Lumpkins, as Hippo was once known when he was a zoo animal, has a pretty comical backstory, being transformed randomly by the High Evolutionary and then setting out to rob banks because he knows no one would hire a semi-human hippo. The life of a supervillain. It's tough when you're part hippo, part human. Number 8. Massacre. Massacre is a pretty meaningful villain when it comes to those of them that reflect the issues of the times as well, though he is a little on the nose when it comes to this. He was caught up in an attack on Wall Street, and while his wife died during the attack, he survived, though shrapnel became lodged in his brain, and this shrapnel affected his feelings, causing him to basically become detached from his own emotions and his own humanity, enabling him to become a sociopathic villain. He set up shooting people at random, but was apprehended and spared by Spider-Man. He then did some time in Ravencroft, basically the Arkham Asylum of Marvel. After getting out of Ravencroft though, he went right back going on a shooting spree. But this time he was able to leverage millions of dollars out of the mass shooting. During this attack though, he was confronted by Superior Spider-Man, aka Otto Octavius, who was in Spider-Man's body. Otto shot him, and this allowed Massacre to feel fear again for the first time, which he reveled in before he basically died. But he might not be dead, so it's fine. Number 7. The Inheritors. Not everyone is a huge fan of these energy vampires, but they play an integral role in the Spider-Verse story arc. And both of the Spider-Verse story arcs, to be honest, Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon. The family of vampires who feed off of spider totems and any other animal-based totems were an extension of the original villain, Morlun. Morlun first appeared in the Spider-Man comics in 2001, and it wasn't until 2014 that we would meet the rest of his family, the Inheritors. These energy vampires threaten the existence of the entire Spider-Verse on more than one occasion. The Card himself, who was part of the Inheritor family, would end up defecting, becoming the Master Weaver. In the end, when the Inheritors ended up cloned and returned due to the error of Superior Spider-Man, the head of the family, Solus, and the rest of the Inheritors ended up defeated at the hands of an Enigma Force-powered Miles Morales armed with the Sword Vigor. And it was discovered that Solus was actually behind all the endless hunger that all of his family felt. Because of this, the Spider Army decided to bring back the Inheritors once more, with each of their consciousness transferred into a baby clone of each of them. Free from the hunger that made them evil, they were then all adopted by Spider-Man. Cutest little baby villains ever. We'll see if they grow up to be evil, but I doubt it. They're pretty cute. Number 6. Regent. Regent was also known as Augustus Roman. What a name, by the way, Augustus Roman. He was the man behind a prison known as the Cellar on Rikers Island, which housed some of the most dangerous criminals. Rikers Island itself is known for prisons of this sort. The difference with this one was that Roman was actually using the prison as a means of creating his own superpowered suit to go after the Avengers with. He was mistreating the prisoners, using them for their powers, which he was then able to utilize within his own suit. Roman was obsessed with controlling and containing the superpowered abilities of all superhumans, which he also aimed to do with the Avengers. This had a lot to do with his own backstory. He's got some feelings about superhumans, let me just say. During his fight with the team, we got to see him take on not just Spider-Man, but we also saw MJ join the fight as well, donning the Iron Spider suit. I love when writers let MJ get involved in some of the action. Regent proved to be a challenging foe for the Avenger team, and for Spider-Man, and for MJ, for everyone that was involved. Number 5. Red Goblin. During a fight with Spider-Man in The Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issue 798, it was revealed that Norman Osborn was bonded with the Carnage symbiote. Dun dun dun. Very scary stuff, guys, very scary stuff here. Spider-Man, of course, had an appropriate response to this news, and I've got a page from that comic in the links below there for you guys. Red Goblin then proceeded to threaten Spider-Man's loved ones, promising he would kill them, not even as Green Goblin would with like a fall, but only as the Red Goblin could, unless Peter Parker gave up being Spider-Man. Also, the Red Goblin killing your family and loved ones is like definitely not a good idea. Terrified Parker agreed to the Red Goblin's terms, but of course he double-crossed him, promising at the end of the comic to fight on, not as Spider-Man, but as Peter Parker. Gasp. Red Goblin would then chase after his own family, his son Harry, his daughter-in-law Liz, and his 2 grandchildren Normie and Stanley. He was accosted during the ongoings of this family affair by Human Torch, Clash, Silk, and Peter Parker, and later Anti-Venom. But due to the combined powers of the Goblin formula and the Carnage symbiote, he was pretty much able to easily defeat those guys, because that's just how terrifying and powerful Red Goblin is. Not to mention, he's also one of the most ruthless and diabolical villains that Parker has pretty much ever come up against. So yeah, don't mess with Red Goblin. He will mess you up. You don't even know. Number 4. Null. Null has been at the center of one of the biggest, most exciting Venom story arcs yet, Donny Cates' Absolute Carnage. This storyline features, in fact, a spectacularly terrifying cast of great big bads, including a resurrected Cletus Cassidy in the Grendel symbiote, evoking an even more psychotic version of the recently deceased Carnage symbiote, Shriek, the Church of the New Darkness, and Doppelganger, an evil version of Spider-Man, basically. Null seeks to gain control over Cletus and be reborn. As such, Dark Carnage, as we now know him, prompted by Null, attempts to reclaim all of the codexes of those who were once bonded with symbiotes. Codexes are basically like a leftover remnant or an imprint of those symbiotes within one's body. Stored within the spine, by the way. Yeah, so you gotta take it out of the spine. Meaning that we see Dark Carnage as well as a whole bunch of other similarly influenced symbiotes go on a rampage, devouring spines of beloved heroes, villains, and characters both alive and dead, left, right, and center, who were once bonded with any symbiote pretty much ever. Yo, if you guys haven't read Absolute Carnage, you need to read at least some of it. Just at least like a tiny bit. Number 3. Kindred. Kindred was hinted at in the comics more than a decade before he made his comic book debut in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, Issue 5. He is maybe one of the best villains because he is still so shrouded in mystery. We don't know a lot about him. In fact, I'm not even sure if he is a he. Could end up being a she. We don't really know. This villain can control and create centipedes and is a demon spawn. In life, he was someone who is close to Peter Parker, hence his codename Kindred. Kindred spirit, get it? He affectionately has referred to Peter as Pete. All we know so far is that he's out for blood when it comes to Norman Osborn, and also has a grudge against Pete for some reason as well. He was also powerful and terrifying enough to have had Mysterio pledge loyalty to him. So you know, like kind of a bigger bad than Mysterio. Mysterio's pretty big bad, pretty big. Number 2, Dr. Octopus. Well, Dr. Octopus is one of the oldest and most iconic Spider-Man villains around. I know y'all were about to be like, but wait, Dr. Octopus he came out in issue 3. Though Chameleon actually was first, came out in issue 1, there was an amazing alternate version of him that needs to be acknowledged. In Into the Spider-Verse, we got to meet a female version of Doc Ock known as Olivia Octavius. So why do we love her? Well, because she is terrifying, brilliant, has a great character design, and is voiced by Kathryn Hahn. And because she was also unexpected. When you're making superhero movies or even writing comics today, it's hard to keep things feeling fresh and unpredictable. And this was honestly something I myself was not expecting when I was watching the movie. I also just love that she has kind of like a Tom Baker's Doctor Who vibe going on with her headband and her scarf. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but I just felt like it was cool. Maybe I'm just imagining things because I love Doctor Who too much. You asked for the newest villains and you You got it. Cadaverous first appeared in the 2019 Spider-Man series co-written by J.J. Abrams and his son, Henry Abrams. It's an experience. Cadaverous is a combination of technology and organic parts. A human face, and almost human mind, albeit one that seems to struggle to speak properly. Takes him forever to get a sentence out. Make up this huge cybernetic monster. In the first issue, we handily see him defeat Peter as Spider-Man and kill MJ, leaving their son Ben to grow up moody and without his mom, and sort of without his dad, who abandoned him. He's got a hook hand, life is hard. It now seems that Cadaverous has a villainous plot, and that young Ben and possibly his absentee hook-handed father Peter will have to work together to unravel and eventually stop said plot. Oh yeah, and he's also got an army of robots.